Final hour overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Bryan Hayes, O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan, TSN 1050 up on TSN 2. Josh Yohe will join us later in the hour of the Athletic. He's down at the rink. Leafs Pens tonight. Get his take on the resurging Pens. Sid's campaign this year, Kyle Dubas, what he made of the trade deadline and what they could do in the future. And he obviously knows the division well, because at least one team's got to get into the playoffs, but you know it could be two. Detroit could get in there as well. They're currently there. But someone's got to have the 3 seed and likely play Carolina. And right now, you look at the Rangers in Carolina, they are set up really, really well, because New York's likely going to win the East, and they're likely going to play that second wildcard team, which is going to be a team that barely makes the playoffs or makes it out of spite. And
there's two thoughts to that, Hayes. You either the old philosophy of, we've been playing playoff hockey for 2 months now, we're ready to rock. It's either a continuation of desperate hockey or they just get absolutely crushed.
Right. And it just feels like a lot of these teams, like Philly, Washington, they're throwing away so many games that how could they ever possibly? Philly's a disaster. Like, Philly is a disaster now. They've lost.
They can't get a save. They can't get it. I feel bad. They don't have NHL goaltending. That's they got that kid that's 6'8" or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel Torts' pain watching, like, this guy's allowing like shots from bad angles and stuff. Like it's unfortunate, but they're in a predicament. Carter Hart's may never play again, and they've had to fill that hole internally. And they weren't trading for Jake Allen at the deadline to try and fill that hole,
Right. And, that's it. They were sellers at the trade deadline. And, they have this Fedotov kid. Fedotov, I think is his name. And he's a monster. Yeah. But he just got over here from the KHL. Why are you even playing him? You've got other guys who clearly you don't love either. But you're basically
That's desperation, man.
It is
you're
desperation.
Tossing that guy in the net.
Exactly. Like, you're aware that he's not NHL ready at this point. But yeah, maybe the Islanders if they stay hot, Pittsburgh if they stay hot. Pittsburgh would be stealing a playoff spot. Like, considering where they were 3 weeks ago, this would be basically them coming in and saying, we're taking it and we feel good. The Islanders could scare you because of their goalie, but they're going to be massive underdogs against Carolina and New York. Massive. And it would be shocking if they found a way to win. Anything can happen in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it would be truly shocking if it did, which sets up really well for those two teams, and as we look ahead to these, they're not brackets, but this 12-pack of teams that we've put together, I considered a lot of that, like who teams are going to play in the first round and how difficult the pathway is going to be, because you have to consider that.
Oh, you put some thought into it.
You have to. It's not just I like this team, I like that team, or that. If you have a really difficult path, it's going to take away your chance of going on a cup run, or at least diminish those chances. So
saying that, though, Hazy, I'm sure the Boston Bruins were like, Florida limped in, they barely got in, and they got upset in the first round.
Of course, and that's the nature of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and that's why, again, I wouldn't – it's definitely not a 100% lock that Carolina and the Rangers beat whoever they're going to play by any means. But it does feel like that Florida team – let's not forget, like if Marchand scores in Game 5 on that breakaway, game's over.
7 seconds left,
7 seconds left. They lose, Florida's out in 5 games. Maybe Maurice gets fired, and it's a totally different story. And now, instead of that, they survive that. Guys start going on runs. Bob gets in, stands on his head for a month and a half, and they get to a cup final. And as a result, it completely changed their complexion. And that's what we keep talking about with the Leafs. You go on one run, it changes your whole reputation. One. Yeah. You have one run where you get to a cup final, you're a winner all of a sudden as opposed to a loser.
Well, the one thing with Florida that people forget, though, they won the President's Trophy the year before. Mm-hmm. And then they had an injured season, and yes, they squeaked into the playoffs, but then they're kind of right back where they are. They got 102 points. Like, they're to me, last season was their outlier, and that's when they went to the cup final. Like, that's like they weren't an 8th place team last year. They ended up in 8th because of their regular season with injuries and inconsistencies, not getting saves, all of that. Mm-hmm. But the year before, they'd won the President's Trophy. Like, that's a hell of a team. They're a good team. So that's the one thing when I look at Florida, because people say that to me all the time. Oh, they limped in the playoffs. They were an 8th place team. No, they ended up in 8th because of their own inconsistencies and injuries and stuff, but they were a hell of a team the year before, and they're a really good team this year. So, it might be a little bit, that's not the Kings of what year did they end up 8th and go on that mark? That 2012 or 2010?
Yeah, it was 11 or 12.
14.
It was their first of the 2 Cubs. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when they were 8th, and I don't recall if they limped or not. They probably got hot at the right time after Sutter came in, and they beat Vancouver in 5. And I don't think they lost again until maybe the Cup final. They might have swept the second and third round, something crazy like that. And I think they played Torts and the Rangers in the Cup final, I believe.
They did.
They did. I think they won that in 6. But all right, let's get after this, Noodles. Do you want to go first? I'll allow you to go first. Go ahead. So, how are we going to do this? Hold on a second. Oh, you're the guy that's going to be running this. You're going to be the guy that ultimately is determining which list you like more and less or whatever. You take this over because I don't want to keep talking. I've got my own list. So you figure out how we're going to do this.
Well, I'd like to see Noodles can go first. I'd like him to reveal his list, preferably if he could go. Are you guys doing a 12-pack, to understand?
Well, what's the difference between 10 and 12?
I'm just saying I would like to go upwards from the bottom because there's a few teams that I think deserve some love, and that might be the deciding factor is just which one of you two, and this is selfish, and it's just my own opinion, but I think there's some teams out there that aren't getting enough love, and maybe whichever one of you two gives those teams the appropriate love will win my heart.
Okay, so it's my understanding Joe on TV has one big board. So I think why don't you take it through 12 down to 1 though, and then flash the board at the end, Joe. So do what O's asking here. Start at 12, down to 1, and then we'll show the board, and then we'll come to me and we'll take it from there.
Noodles, go ahead.
Okay. Here I go. At 12, I've got Tampa, and they've got 10 guys who have 10-plus goals. So they've got some balance. They've got a goalie. They've got a Norris Trophy winning player. They've got Kucherov, who's probably going to win the Hart, if not runner-up type of thing. So they've got a spine there that looks pretty damn good. At 11, I've got Vancouver, and they would be higher on my list, but I'm scared about the goalie. I'm scared about Demko because they've only won 2 of their last 6, and DeSmith has been, he's a backup, and that's the only concern. Vancouver would be higher up on my list, bar none, but I'm worried about the goaltender being ready in time, and is he going to get back to Vezina form because him and Hellebuck were Vezina. At 10, I've got Winnipeg. You talk about balance of scoring. These guys have 13 10-plus scorers. Morrissey and Dillon have 9 goals, and Dillon has 8. So they might have 14 double-digit goal scorers, which is pretty impressive. Like, that's balanced attack. At 9, I've got the Leafs. They have the least amount of 10-plus goal scorers, but there has been injury. I'll throw Morgan Riley would be a 10-plus goal scorer for me, but he's been injured, all of that type of stuff. But they've got the big players. At 8, I have Edmonton. And same type of thing.
Holy crap!
What?
Okay, I like it. Continue.
Let me just speak. Let me speak.
I know. I'm sorry. Sorry
Edmonton,
for the introduction.
Has depth. They could have potentially 13 double-digit guys. McDavid, Draisaitl. They have a history. Those guys in the playoffs of at least dragging their team. This is where I feel like I don't know if it's off the board, but I have to give respect. I've got Vegas at 7 because Vegas they won the Cup last year. They're getting healthy and they're dangerous. And don't count them out because they are a team that could do some damage. If Stone shows up and all of a sudden he's a rock star, if Hurdle settles in and they get the goaltending that they need. At 6, I've got Florida. Same thing, balance. This is a team that knows how to win, shown that they can do it. So why would you count them out because of the last couple weeks? They're still a team that's really solid. Now to my top 5.
Okay.
I've got the Boston Bruins. Boston Bruins is a team that, again, I think they've got something to prove. I think they're pissed. And Jim Montgomery has been on this team, leaning on it. I did a Bruins game not that long ago and had a conversation with them. Their focus is all about the playoffs. That was 13 games ago. He was saying our focus is making sure our guys are all dialed in for the playoffs. At number 4, I've got Carolina. I think they don't get enough respect. How deep they are, how scary they are, balanced they are from the back end. You added some scoring depth at the deadline. Dangerous. Number 3, Dallas. Dallas, I think, is a team that you look at them second in the National Hockey League. They've got the goalie, but they're not as sexy. They just don't. They're not as sexy as the teams we've talked around them. But don't sleep on them. They're a hell of a team. At number 2, Colorado Avalanche. I feel like McKinnon is capable of dragging them if they can get the saves. If they can get the saves. And Makar is a rock star. We all know. Rantanen's health. He got hit the other day by Ekholm. I think he'll be fine. It looked like he got his bell rung. And at number 1, I've got the New York Rangers. That team, I watched them live the other day. These guys are... They've got a Vezina goaltender. They've got a Norris defenseman. I like that formula from the back end, and they've got balance. Yep. And Panarin is having a Hart-type season. So that's my 12-pack. I tried to give as much love around, but
Jamie, I got to tell you,
I like it.
I got to tell you, there's some very good things about this list, and I would think I can tell there's some thought put into it, educated answers, and it's very impressive. And the other guy better come with some heat if he wants to overturn this. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, that's a good list. I'm sitting here watching and looking at my list as you're going through yours, and there is a remarkable amount of similarity. I will say that.
I would think so, too.
Yeah. I guess I'll get started here. Are you ready,
I am ready, and I'm just saying that was impressive, his knowledge of the league, different things, goaltenders. You better be prepared to go or you get dummied. Go ahead.
I have Tampa at 12 as well. I have them at 12. I will let me, before I even get into this, as I said a couple hours ago while I was doing this, I like all of these teams. Like, I really think
agreed.
Any of these teams could win. And
yes, you have to slot them somewhere.
I know that. But my point is, in other years, it'd be like, these guys 12, they stink. 11, they got no chance. I actually don't believe that this year. Parity gets thrown around a lot, and then you see it in golf all the time. Parity, and then Scheffler wins. I really believe that there could be any of 12, 13, 14 teams in this. Tampa at 12, they're peaking at the right time. You know all their best players. You know their championship pedigree. I think their depth is lacking. I think their defense is lacking. I think missing Sergachev is really significant. And I think they're going to have an incredibly difficult road because they're likely playing Boston and then either Florida or Toronto and then the Rangers or Carolina. I just think on the road, up against it, I think they're in tough. I got Tampa at 12. I have Winnipeg at 11. I worry they don't score enough. And I know that it's a defensively sound team. Hellebuck is an absolute beast. But I also worry about their path. They're going to start in Colorado and then likely go through Dallas. That, for me, is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Winnipeg at 11, Vancouver at 10. Now, Vancouver, what's difficult to really project here is because Edmonton still could catch them, right? Like, they could have to play Vegas in the first round. Or LA in the first round, but and I guess they could play LA or Nashville in terms of the first round as well, even if they win their division. The only thing stopping me, two things. One, Demko, which is scaring me because he's still out. And it's, remember when he first went down, it was a couple of weeks. It's been a few weeks. It's been more than that, and he's still out.
Yeah.
And they just don't have the playoff chops. I haven't seen them in these playoff situations to be able to really buy in that much. I have Toronto at 9. I like the way they're playing. We've been very consistent. We've talked about this team more than any other team in the league. That will continue. A lot of this comes down to Florida in the first round, likely Boston in the second, New York, Carolina. It's just a really tough road. It's one I believe they can overcome, but they need to prove past demons are no more, and they're wired for go time. And if and when that happens, we may look at this list and say, we cheated them, but I have the Leafs at 9. I have Boston at 8. I've loved what they've done. I do. I love what they've done. But missing Bergeron, and I know they haven't really missed a beat. Missing Krejci, I know they haven't really missed a beat. But I look up the middle of the ice, and I have a tough time seeing them at winning a cup. not a round or two, but this is who do I think can win the Cup.
They win a lot of games, though, Brian.
They do. Look what they just did to Florida over the weekend. Like they're a really good team. They're a great team. I'm not. This isn't a bias against the Bruins. I just look at the 7 teams ahead of them, and there's certain ingredients that the other teams have, or a pathway that the other teams have that I support. I have Boston at 8. I have Vegas at 7. Vegas at 7. A lot of that is still based on it's undetermined who they're going to play. Where they're going to start, if they're going to be on the road. Well, they're going to be on the road. Injuries, Hill's a little bit banged up. Thompson left, but I think he's going to be okay. Does Stone return? Right. Does Hurdle fit in? There's still a lot of moving pieces. It's kind of a chess game in Vegas. Yeah, and I also think, again, with parity being what it is, I think it's very difficult to repeat. I know Tampa did it. I know Pittsburgh did it. We've seen it twice in the last decade. It can happen. They are capable of doing it. But historically, it's very, very tough. Vegas at 7, Edmonton at 6. I like where they're at. I mean, what more can you say? They've been great since the coaching change. Skinner scares me. He still scares me a little bit, but he's been statistically great. He has. He's just a young guy without that playoff pedigree. But beyond that, I like their top 4, their depth on defense. I don't know what's going to happen with Vander Kane. That's getting a little sticky. I'm worried about that to an extent. But I like where Edmonton's at. Edmonton with home ice in the first round. Maybe they, catch Vancouver, end up with that top seed in the Pacific. I got Edmonton at 6. I have Florida at 5. I'm a little bit scared of the way they've been playing down the stretch. Again, I'm not trying to downplay what they did last year, but Bobrovsky was out of this world. I don't think that gets brought up enough. I love their makeup. I like that they're tough and all. I love Matthew Tkachuk. There's a lot to really like about them. They're not some sort of juggernaut, greatest team. Wow, look out. I don't see them that way. I see them as a really good team who's going to have home ice in the first round, who's going to be really tough to knock out. But I do think you can penetrate that. I do think you can beat them. I have Florida at 5. I got Colorado at 4. Again, this is about pathway. It's Georgiev, and they're going to have Winnipeg in the first round. Really tough out. On the road, Dallas. I like them a lot. There's not much more to say. I have Colorado at 4. I have Dallas at 3 because of that home ice advantage. That's a big part of it. They're going to get an easier test in the first round, right, as opposed to facing a Winnipeg or an Edmonton or a Vegas. They're likely going to get a first round that's a little bit lighter, winning the West. They're, like we said, stars, not necessarily jumping off the page, but a great goaltender, good coach, a lot of depth, size, really good team. Dallas at 3. I got Carolina at 2. I have Carolina at 2. Freddie Anderson, he's been great since he returned. Freddie has been unbelievable since he returned. He scares me. We know it up close and personal in Toronto in terms of his playoff history. But you take the goaltender out of it, you give me coach, top 6, defense, and 4 lines. I love Carolina. I love the way they built. I love the way they're playing, and I love their matchup. A lot of this is matchup. If they have Philly in the first round or the Islanders in the first round, I really like the way they're set up, and this leads me into number 1 with the Rangers. Aside from the fact that they're built really well, they got a really good top 9. They got a great top 4, right? With Trouba, Fox, Miller, they're really, really good on the back end. They got Shesterkin, who's a freak in net, even quick if he has to, has been great. Right. Laviolette's got a long history of getting to a new team and dragging them places. But I look at the Rangers at 1 and Carolina at 2, and again, I'm doing the numbers game. I think both will win the first round, possibly pretty easily. And then one of them is going to be standing in the Eastern Final. If I can look at that and say, I feel comfortable one of the Rangers or the Canes are in the Eastern Final, I can't really say that about other teams on this list. That puts them in the position where they're at 1 and 2. So there it is. I don't know. It could change between now and Game 1. Let's be clear on that because they're still jockeying for positions. There could be injury updates. There could be guys who return. There could be guys who leave. You look at West, Demko's a big part of that. Mark Stone's a big part of that. But I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
Good list.
The defense rests.
I honestly, I'd first like to commend you both. You put time and energy. These are very quality lists. Now, I will say one thing. You guys put your shoelaces up to the rafters and you kick the Canada teams right in the absolute junk with these lists. Right where it counts. And that I didn't appreciate.
They got to prove it.
I'm just saying I think the Edmonton Oilers are a very scary team and a top contender, and I'm shocked that none of you had them in the top 3 or 4. McDavid and Draisaitl fired up, and if they can get a save, they're very dangerous. I think you guys also disrespected Vegas a little bit. And the
Who's
Boston
coming out, though? Who's coming out? If you're moving him up, if you're moving Vegas up, who's coming down?
I'm just trying to make my observations. When you're doing an exercise like
Right.
this, you have to go through things, and you have to pick apart little things. At the end of the day, Noodles, you have a better list. That wasn't a list. That was www.noodleshub.com. That's what that was. I thought it was that good, and it was better than Brian's. There was just some little intricacies in there. I thought it was better. The delivery, the broadcasting element of it. Noodles, you gave Boston a little more love than Brian did, and for that, you get the win.
I'll take it, but I think the lists were great. Like, honestly, there's some
Well, let's
things
be honest. They're very similar, but
Very humble.
I really didn't like the kick in the junk to Canada. The Winnipeg Jets, gentlemen, if they can get on a heater, this is about a 2 to 3-1 fest in the playoffs. If they can get that cooking, they're very dangerous.
I agree.
And you both slapped them around on your list.
No,
I thought that
no.
was incredibly disrespectful. They've got Hellebuck and net, and you guys had them way down in the basement of the list. The whole country, you just said no thanks.
Okay, this is 30 years that nobody's won. And for me, I was going to add one thing. I had Winnipeg at 10. But I also said they've got 13 10-plus scores. I talked about the balance. Morrissey, 9 goals. Dillon at 8. So they might have 15 guys in double digits as far as the balance. You got the goaltender. But, how many times have we said it? Not doing it again this year. Again, that's the team that I put my egg.
I know.
So I wanted to be balanced in my attack because I think they should be higher. I think Edmonton could be higher. I think there could be a few teams, but I could make an argument for Vancouver to be higher. But the goalie, I need his health. So there's an argument. All 12 of these teams. I'm sad that I put Tampa at 12 because that's a hell of a team.
And I'll tell you guys another thing that was disappointing for me. I would have had Vegas no lower than 4. I don't care where they're at in the standings. I don't care what injuries they're dealing with. I think that they can get healthy and cause real problems for anybody that they're facing.
Yeah.
I do love the respect that you gave to Carolina, the Rangers, and Dallas. That was mandatory for me to view something like this. You did do that properly, but man, there was some other disrespectful things in here that were incredible.
It can't be disrespectful if the top teams you agree with, then that, like, who is coming? That's the whole point, man. That's the difficulty of the exercise is, and even Vegas, you mentioned it, we don't know who they're playing yet. That's factoring in too. But if they start in Edmonton, that's why both of them, I dragged them both down. Like, one of them's out in 10 days. You know, like, I don't know which one. I think it'll be a crapshoot. I really do think that's
and
a
you're
coin
right.
flip.
One of the parts of the exercise is thinking of just the finish line of, they could
pathway.
win it all. The pathway is a factor. And I had strong consideration to that when I picked noodles.hub.com.
Sure.
I thought of it. I thought of it.
That's why I had the Rangers in Carolina, though, because their first round upsets or their first round opponents are likely going to be like very inferior opponents. Doesn't mean they can't win. And the reason we couldn't do a 16-pack here is because we don't know who's getting in definitively. Right. And maybe Nashville would put their hands up and say, hey, we've been playing like a top 12 team the last 2 months, and they have. But, you know, there's a lot of really good teams with serious pedigree. And
I'd like the fans to weigh in. I'd like Doogie to put it up and get it till 7 o'clock and see if they agree with.
There's a lot of crossover too, Noodles. Like you and I have a lot of similarities on our list.
And the one thing too, as you mentioned, Edmonton is 3 points behind Vancouver. They play each other once, and Edmonton plays Vegas, Arizona, Vancouver, San Jose, Colorado. Like that's who they play out.
That's
so there's a real chance
you
that
did not have, Hayes. You did not have that stat pack.
What I'm saying is, but I had Edmonton at 8. Hayes had Edmonton higher. Yeah. My point is, I'm looking at it. There's a chance that Edmonton could play Nashville in that first round, and Dallas could end up with Vegas. Like, you know, there's some weird things going on. LA could drop down. Vegas could climb. Like, it's that's why I love these lists, but I'd love to do them 10 days from
we'll
now.
do
where
them again.
You know the matchups.
We're all
a redo.
16-pack around the table once we get to the playoffs. Once we know who's in, what the matchups look like, lock it in. It's coming.
Well, instead of the list, why don't we do bracketology times 3?
I like that idea.
Yeah,
I think we could fill out a bracket this year. I think we absolutely can do that. Speaking of which, the men's side, the college finals tonight, UConn versus Purdue.
Shout out to South Carolina, by the way, undefeated season on the women's side.
Yes, and they took off in the second half. It was a great game, and then by the fourth quarter, it was just they were bigger, they were better, they hit more shots, they defended well, and Iowa just didn't have it. But the ratings are in, I think, on ESPN, ABC, 18.7 million watching that game.
That's awesome, man.
That's incredible. Like that's a number, and I think it speaks to the star power of Caitlin Clark clearly. Like Caitlin Clark is a phenomenon. Like she is completely elevated everything in terms of attention, in terms of draw. I have so many people in my life, I'm sure you guys too, that are like, what do you think? You think Iowa can win? You think Caitlin Clark can win? Could she pull this off? I've never had those type of conversations to this extent. And, she's just a great player. South Carolina, obviously a great program, a great team. They've won 2 of the last 3. Iowa got them in the Final Four last year, which is pretty incredible. But 18.7 million views. That's just an astonishing number. I mean, it's an astonishing number. And the men's final goes tonight. Zach Edey, Canadian, for Purdue tonight. So we'll see what he's got. See if he can find himself a win tonight in the finale of the men's bracket. All right, best bets by FanDuel still to come. Jays, they're home. The home opener tonight. The new park is being unveiled. It's Jays Mariners tonight down at the Rogers Center. Continue to look ahead to that. And Leafs Pens tonight with Sid in town. It's a big game for the Penguins. We'll tee that up as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.
Quick little nugget from a fan, and it's why I believe was more dangerous than the slander you gave the Boston Bruins. The last 5 teams to win the President's Trophy went to a Cup final the next year. That's the kind of digging and research I wanted.
I know that stat.
Interesting.
I knew that stat.
Well, you didn't reveal it. I'll take claim to it. I'll take claim. Maybe I had it too. I just decided not to use it.
I had it too.
I had Boston pretty high on that list. The question is, if Pittsburgh gets in, where will they be on the list? 1 through 16.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. It's probably closer to 15 or 16, but you never know. I mean, if they get in, that's defying the odds as well, right? Like the idea of them even being in a conversation going to the playoffs, to me, is shocking, considering where they were 3 weeks ago, let alone where they were at the trade deadline, where they were selling pieces, including Jake Gensel. And now Sid's been on fire. The Pens are on fire. And they're back alive, and they're in the playoff race. And to chat about it, we're joined now by Josh Yohe of The Athletic. How you doing, Josh?
Good. How are you?
Doing very well. Take us, I guess, inside the room or your vantage point. You've been watching this team, covering this team up close and personal for a long time. How did they get into this position today where they're chasing the playoffs, considering where they were a month and a half ago where they were selling pieces at the trade deadline?
Well, we can't ignore the reality that a number of teams in the East have given them a lot of help in the last few days, in particular the Capitals and Flyers. We all know the middle of the East has not been very good this year. That's helped. But, the fact is the Penguins went on that road trip last week at the Rangers and then at New Jersey where they never play well, and then at Washington, which was a huge game. They won all 3 in regulation. Then they beat the Lightning in regulation. It's just come out of nowhere, and I could tell you about a lot of different people that have helped out, but the fact is Sidney Crosby's been incredible all year, and now Gino Malkin has really joined the party in a big way, largely because of Michael Bunting, who has been unbelievably good on his wing and has really brought out the best in Malkin. And the 2 big guys can smell it now, and when they can smell it, that changes things a little bit.
Josh, before we get to Sid and Malkin, if they ultimately do get into the playoffs, do you think that changes anything from management's organizationally moving forward with this team? Like if they do get in and they win a round, does that kind of change things moving forward, do you think?
It's a great question, and I think that maybe it would. I mean, do I think Kyle Dubas is going to go out and trade a first-round pick or prospect, this summer if the Penguins win a round or two? No, I don't think that. But will he say, boy, if we can just bring in a couple of pieces this summer, could this team maybe still win, with this core? Maybe it would change his mind. I mean, they would have to do something really impressive in the playoffs for that to happen. If they go make the playoffs and then lose to the Rangers in 5 in the first round, I don't think that would change any plans. But who's to say? And we have certainly learned that Crosby is still one of the best players in the world. And I think we've also learned that if you surround Malkin with the right people, he can still be a heck of an option as your second-line center. So I guess anything's in play at this point is what I'm saying. And it's shocking that you're even asking me that question because 10 days ago I never would have thought this was possible.
Josh, outside of Crosby, and you said Malkin's come alive, his parents being there is a pretty cool story as well, but is there anybody you would circle to say, hey, this guy has been a big part of it as well, maybe some of this resurgence?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of names to watch for that maybe aren't big names. I will tell you this, P.O. Joseph, the young defenseman who was a healthy scratch most of the year, was not having a good season. All of a sudden, he's been put on a pairing with Chris Letang. And Letang has been his mentor. In fact, P.O. Joseph lives at Letang's house. A couple of Quebec natives that live together. And all of a sudden, P.O. Joseph has played at a really high level. I know for a fact Kyle Dubas is thrilled with him and how he's played. He's really brought out the best in Letang the last few games. So he's a guy to watch. And another young guy, Drew O'Connor, will be on Sidney Crosby's left wing tonight. He's big, he's fast, kind of a late bloomer. He's just starting to realize what he's capable of doing at the NHL level. So they needed some young guys to kind of join the party here and make them a better team, and those two have done it. And one other guy who's not a no-name that I have to mention as well, I've been pretty hard on Erik Karlsson at times this year in my articles. He's really been up or down. He's been as advertised. As brilliant as he is, he does things that drive you crazy as well. Man, has he been good the last 5 or 6 games. He's playing his best hockey with the Penguins by far.
With Josh Yohe of The Athletic, Leafs Pens tonight. The Penguins, they basically have to win out or real close to that. And Sid has just been a marvel. He's hit 40 goals. Again, he's going to have at least a point a game for his 19th straight season. Only Gretzky's done that. His general approach, like we played his clip, his scrum, the week of the trade deadline where he didn't want anything to do with the idea of them being buyers, sellers. He looked like he was really pissed off with the questioning, quite frankly. His disposition, like his general attitude, his general approach, what can you tell us about Sid and why it seems to be so just masterful in terms of his leadership and his ability to continue to produce?
Well, I can tell you, he was not happy with Jake Guentzel being traded. Mm-hmm. He made that clear, and he didn't even have to say anything. You could just tell by his body language when you'd bring up the question. He and Guentzel were great together on the ice, and they're really close off the ice. He was unhappy, and even Kyle Dubas admitted that, I had to make a trade, and I knew Sid wasn't going to like it. And Sid didn't play very well for a few games after that trade. I really think it affected him psychologically, but then all of a sudden, there was a game a couple of weeks ago in Colorado, and Sid had a 4-point game against his buddy Nathan McKinnon, and he just came alive after that game. And I can tell you, I've covered the guy for 15 years. I know him well. There is just a laser focus about him. He doesn't even have a smile on his face after games when they win now. I mean, he's just still locked in 10 minutes later in the locker room. Like I said, he can smell it right now. He knows if they win 4 of their last 5, they're probably in. And the only thing that drives Sidney Crosby at this point is the playoffs. I'm telling you, he doesn't care about his records or his numbers. He's aware of them, but the guy lives and breathes for the playoffs. That's all that's driving him. So I'm sure you will see him at his best in Toronto tonight and in these last 5 games of the season. Boy, does he look motivated right now.
We spoke about different scenarios. If this continued to be a train wreck and they were just playing out the stretch and it turned into a gong show because the month and a half before that do you think things would be any different for Sidney Crosby heading into the offseason? Like, do you actually think there might have been a possibility of him pulling the trigger and playing elsewhere, or at least entertaining that idea?
Very unlikely. He's we bring this up with him about one time a year. And he doesn't like it when we bring it up. He looked at us this year, and he was kind of defiant for him. Sid's always very polite and friendly, but for his standards, he was a little defiant. He said, I tell you guys every year, I don't want to play anywhere else. It's never changed. And I believe that. I think one thing you have to understand about Sid, his two heroes in life are Steve Yzerman and Mario Lemieux, two guys that only ever played for one franchise. That means a lot to him. It really does. And also, he's just such of a creature of habit. Like, he really is. I don't know if he'd be comfortable ever playing in another city. He's literally lived more than half of his life in Pittsburgh. I just think it's where he's comfortable. He wasn't happy with how things were going this season, obviously, but I'd be shocked if he doesn't sign a new contract this summer.
And obviously that would be Kyle Dubas who would be driving that discussion. And if Sid wants to say and wants to sign, then Dubas will find a way to figure that out. But we've obviously been pretty fascinated with the story of Dubas. We know him very well up here. You've covered him now up close and personal as the man in charge in Pittsburgh for a year. What do you make of the job he's done, and how has the market received Kyle?
The market likes him a lot. Hey, Kyle is a big name. He came to Pittsburgh. Penguins fans wanted anybody other than Ron Hextall, so he was greeted with a lot of enthusiasm. It's been a hit-or-miss year for him. He made a couple of decisions this summer that were not good. The contract he gave Ryan Graves is a real problem. He's just been an utter disaster. But he also brought in Michael Bunting, who's been great, and Alex Nedeljkovic, who's made a huge difference for the Penguins. He brought in Lars Eller, third-line center, has been really good. So I think Kyle has done more good than bad. He's trying to pull off the impossible. He wants the Penguins to basically still be competitive as long as Crosby is here. But in the background, he wants to build up the system and accumulate draft picks and prospects. It's almost impossible to have it both ways. That's what the Pittsburgh ownership wants. That's what the fan base wants, and that's what he's trying to pull off. And I'll tell you what, if they make the playoffs after he sold Gensel, suddenly everyone feels even better about Kyle Dubas with the way that would work out.
You mentioned Ned and Net. Has he been a big part of this stretch as well? I mean, Tristan Jarry, I think he's a fantastic goaltender, but he certainly needs help. And Nedeljkovic coming in, and he's been inconsistent this season, but he's certainly played well recently.
Nedeljkovic, really, he's been very good. I mean, listen, the Penguins are not exactly the 95 Devils defensively. It's not easy being the goaltender on this team. They give up a lot of odd man rushes. They make it tough. It's a really interesting situation. This is the 9th straight game that Nedeljkovic will start. Tristan Jarry was having a fairly good season. He hit a rough patch, and I don't know what happened. Something happened when he got pulled in Dallas a few weeks ago. Mike Sullivan wasn't happy with him at all. He hasn't gotten a start since then. Nedeljkovic is essentially the number one guy right now, and he's been really good. So it's an interesting situation moving forward. Tristan Jarry has a ton of talent. But he's never been a goaltender who's been great in big games. That's something to keep in mind.
We'll get you out of here with, I guess, somewhat of a projection, because the whole hockey world is waiting for, the bracket to be complete, and we need a third seed in the Metro, and we need a second wild card. The Islanders, Pittsburgh, Washington, Philly. I guess you could throw in Detroit. You cover the league worldwide, or league-wide, I should say. Josh, how do you see this playing out the final week and a half?
Oh, man, this is a tough one. This is I hope this goes better than my NCAA bracket that I did last week. I admit I'm close to the Penguins. Maybe I'm biased because I see this up close. I have a feeling they're going to pull this off. They get Detroit at home on Thursday. The last game of the season is Pittsburgh at the Islanders. I really think the winner of that game is going to end up with a 3 seed in the Metro. I'm going to give the Penguins the nod. I just think they're a better team than the Islanders. And I think Detroit maybe gets the other spot. They've got a little bit of a more favorable schedule. I am not buying the Capitals or Flyers. I really think they're both in a world of trouble right now.
Yeah, I think Washington losing 6 in a row, Philly losing 7 in a row. I think you're onto something there, Josh. It's not moving in the right direction for those two teams. It's going to be fun tonight. Leafs Pens, enjoy it, and we really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
My pleasure, guys. Anytime.
Josh Yohe of The Athletic. Yeah, I think Washington and Philly are still there. They both have 83 points. It's not as if they've been mathematically eliminated. They're fading so quickly and
not playing well.
And
that's
fans don't take solace in the fact that It's about winning, but the fact that either of them are sniffing is borderline a miracle from what I thought at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
A borderline miracle. Watching Washington at the beginning of the year, I thought they were going to get the lottery. I thought Celebrini was going to be a cap. They were that bad, and they've turned it around. Carberry's done a very good job there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has. And yet they're minus 41 goal differential. That's been pointed out a lot. Philly's minus 23. But I think you can say that about all these teams. Maybe the Islanders were expected to compete, yet they're minus 23 goal differential. But Detroit's a really cool story. They've been good all year. They've been in the playoffs all year. Yeah. They just got to close. Pittsburgh's a really cool story, the way they've come down the stretch. We'll see. It'll be fun with Sid in town tonight. It's going to be a cool buzz downtown. You got the Leafs playing. You got the Jays home opener, right? There's going to be some sort of unveiling of this new, the new renovations. I'm sure they're going to have a ceremony early in the game. They're going to call
Apparently
it all the players.
Manoah's up here. Did you see that? Is Manoah up here?
Well, I think it's more about the 40-man roster because Romano, Swanson, Jansen, Manoah, I guess they're all up here. I saw that. I would assume it's about calling everyone out, because those guys are hurt, but maybe it's, hey, let's get everyone out onto the field. I don't know. That is a bit surprising, though. Manoah just got lit up in Dunedin yesterday and gets on a bird and comes up. That's got to be an awkward stop and chat in a clubhouse.
How was your day yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh, I just got crushed by single A players.
It's not
that
great.
Cannot be an easy chat. That's when you might want to come in with the eclipse glasses on.
But other than the getting crushed with loud doubles and stuff, isn't the location the biggest kind of scariest thing? Because it's he hit 3 guys in his first spring training outing, and then the dirt ball and the worm burners and this. It's just
it's a mess.
What?
Yeah, there's no other way to put it. It's an absolute disaster, and he feels like he's light years away from the majors. Light years.
Not
away.
According to what he said today.
I know, but he can say all he wants. Actions speak louder than words. Exactly, man. The statistics are what they are, and it's just not good for him right now. All right, so we'll come back and tee that up. Leafs, Pens, Jays, Mariners tonight. The college final tonight. Purdue against UConn as well. Masters week. What a week we're going to have. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. I'm going with the Toronto parlay tonight. Okay? Could have got burned on this a week ago when the Raptors got crushed and the Leafs got smoked and the Jays got smoked. I'm reversing the fortunes here.
All winners.
Leafs win tonight. Jays win tonight. Austin Matthews 5+ shots on net. This guy is a machine when it comes to shots on goal. You don't even have to watch the game. Just track his stats. It's every shift: shot on goal, shot on goal, shot on goal, post, shot on goal, post, in. It's just crazy. And I fully expect he scores tonight. I expect he does. I think he's got to have a big week this week with Pittsburgh tonight, Jersey back-to-back, Detroit on Saturday. You got 4 games coming up here where it's try to bank 6 if you can, right? Get there by the end of the weekend, fly down to Florida, you've hit 70, boom. Move on with your life, start worrying about the playoffs, which I'm sure he already is. I know the team already is. But I like these lines, too. I will say that. I don't know how long it's going to last. I thought Marner looked pretty good. On Saturday, he looked pretty good. And
great opportunity for Bobby McMahon too. If he can be a Barbashev minus, he's not Barbashev, but he can be a disruptor, a big man, physical, and if he can have touch around the net and make plays, he can be a big factor. And I love the fact that Mitch, it's just even Nylander playing with the kids. It's forget about your own stats; they'll come if you just work and play. Mm-hmm. Just it looks good. It can be effective. It can be really good for the team. You're going to get your moments in the game where your skills going to come together, whether it be 4-on-4, the power play, different scenarios, offensive zone face-offs. You're all going to come together at certain times of the game. This is about winning, and I love the no poutiness, nothing. It's just be a pro and go out there and work, and it's about winning. I love it. I like where they're at.
Well, they got to back it up, and they're going to have the one thing you pointed out, Hayes, is you're going to have some desperate teams. The Leafs are
Noodles,
just trying to
that
focus
87
on the playoffs,
is coming tonight. He's coming tonight. He'll be good tonight.
Yeah, But is the rest of his team going to be good? That's the question. It's on the road. It's a big challenge. But, Monday night, let's see what the juice in the building. There might be some juice. It was last Monday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got the Eclipse, right? You got the Jays are back home. I think the Eclipse is bringing a lot of people together. I would guess, a lot of Eclipse talk downtown. The total eclipse, was it a 99% partial eclipse? What kind of shades were you wearing? There were people, like I was talking to people who were saying, man, I got to get to Niagara Falls. I got to get to Hamilton. I got to catch this eclipse in the best possible spot. And I think, like Niagara Falls, obviously it's a busy place most days anyway. On a Monday in April, I would guess there'd generally be a lot of availability at hotels. I think it was packed. People flying in around the world. They're like, I got to see this eclipse over the falls. So I was talking to someone who was driving to Augusta. They're like, I don't know how to get down there because there's so much going on. Like the borders, because of the eclipse, it's going to affect how I get down there. Like imagine you possibly get off track on your pursuit of Augusta because of the eclipse. That would drive you crazy.
It could have happened every 300 years, and I still wouldn't have cared less about it. I was cleaning up my kitchen, and it went dark, and I was like, cool. I just didn't care about it at all.
Not an eclipse guy. We'll put you down as a non-eclipse
I forgot about it.
How could you forget about it?
My wife, I went upstairs a commercial, and she's like, it only had, the last one was like 40 years ago, and I think she thought that would make me say, holy crap, and I cared less.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. Not an Eclipse guy.
No.
Not a Maritimes guy either. But now
Dude,
you are. Now you're a Maritimes guy.
I just tried to say, I thought out east, the water, I thought it was all-encompassing. They were referred to as islanders.
Okay.
Wrong.
Maritimers,
sorry. I got the word wrong.
It's all good. All right. Lease Penn's coming up on TSN Radio. Jay's home opener. College men's basketball final. It's going to be a fun one tonight. Big couching night tonight. Big Boston pizza night tonight. Big FanDuel night tonight. The whole thing across the board. Can't wait for it. It's going to be a fun week. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
Noodles, I'm sorry I wasn't truthful on live TV, but your list was substantially better. Congrats and great work. 4 p.m.?
We'll chat then.